Cosmology. It would seem that it has become a sort of a fashion for all religions to begin the exposition of their systems by explaining the creation of the world and the structure of the world order. These are the goals of a cosmology. Technically, it deals with the structural order of the world, just not simply by giving an account of it, but explaining how the shaping factors of the order came about. It is important to keep this point in mind because this is not the understanding of cosmology in the mind of Western people. Looking at A from the world view of B always leads to a great deal of misunderstanding. Cosmology in the West attempts to explain the outer aspects of creation, the making of light, the stars, animals, men, separating the upper from the lower waters, atoms, molecules, etc. Provide no insight into the structural and administrative and the shaping forces of the world. Neither does the description of how the various elements came into being. Kamitic cosmology, on the other hand, focuses on the creation of the structural shaping components of the world. These are the mental or spiritual faculties of God. And if we keep in mind that God and man are the macro and micro expressions of the same being, self, God, and vehicles of expression in the world, then it will be clear that we are also delving into an exposition of the psychological and spiritual makeup of man. This is why we title the Holy Scriptures that deal with the account of creation and cosmology is called the Book of Knowing the Transformations of Ra and Overthrowing Apep. When you know how the world was created, how your psychological makeup was created, and why God made the world and man, the divine plan, then you will be able to overcome evil, the propensity and vulnerability of the lower parts of your being to sin. The Pau Neteru, the tree of life of Anu. Text of the book of Knowing the Manifestations of Ra. Explanations. The various faculties of God, Neteru, archangels, are the faculties of or transformed out of Ra, the Holy Spirit, and of overthrowing Apep. Apep is evil that is transcended through knowing the details of man, of how man is like God. The words Neber Cher, the supreme being, which he spoke after he came into existence, I am he who came into being as the creator. Many were things which came forth by my mouth. Reference to the word as the chief tool of creativity for God and man. I enlightened my will, and law is the basis laid and law is the basis of all creation. I was alone. Monotheism alluded to the 1,000 years before Akhenaten or Moses. I became from God one, God's three, that is from out of myself, were raised up Shu and Tefnut in the unmanifested, undifferentiated realm, Nu. Shu and Tefnut gave birth to Seb, earth, and Nut, heaven. Seb and Nut gave birth to Asar, Haru, Kent, and Mati, Set, Aset, and Nebtet. The Supreme Being, God One, emanates the God's divine faculties out of itself. Note, however, that it is Western scholars that call these divine faculties Neteru gods. Their counterpart in Judaism and Christianity are called archangels, a neat trick to characterize the Egyptians as polytheists and themselves as monotheists. The record speaks for itself. Another version of the book states the following: the words of Neber Cher, the Supreme Being, which he spoke after he came into manifestation. I am he who came into being as the creator. I produced from my being from primeval matter. I produced from my being. I produced my being from primeval matter. My name is Osiris. I brought my name into my mouth. That is a word of power. The text goes on to differentiate the nominal name of the Godhead, Atum, from the word of power, Osiris. That represents its active and creative nature that acts through the empowered words. I, even I, came into existence in the form of things which came into existence, coming into existence in the multitude of forms. Here is given the purpose of creation. Alone, the one God has no one and nothing to interact with. It has to create out of its energy, matter, Ra, the infinitude of things into which it projects its consciousness and will itself in order to have an experience. The text goes on to say that Asar, Heru, Kent, Amati, Set, Oset, and Nephet go on to create their children who create manifold beings on earth. They must invoke the name of God to overthrow their enemies. The latter five mentioned divine principles, Asar, etc., are said to create words of power for the overthrow of Apep, the evil in man. That God, one, became three through emanation from itself. God's three, then five, and finally 10 is a dynamic way of showing that all 10 divine principles are aspects of the one, a unity, monotheism. We must now turn our attention to the role that each netter of the Pauti, sphere of the tree of life, as referred to in the Kabbalah, plays in the process of progressing from a oneness within, which is the seed of multiplicity, and the multiplicity within, which is unity, the world, the one verse. We have thus the outline of the divine plan, the Sekri Neter. 1. There is only one God in the world, Nebercher, the Supreme Being, the Lord of all. Monotheism is not simply about there being one God. It is the foundation of understanding the reason for creation, the divine plan, the reason for the creation of man and other creatures, deities or archangels, animals, etc. So here we have an omniscient and omnipotent being that is capable of manifesting anything in the world, but is unable to have experiences or enjoyment. There are no other beings and no other beings in and as the world. God is all alone, without a body or mind even. 3. Since Nebercher's consciousness and substance is an infinite and eternal continuum to nowhere, a logical deduction from being one and alone, creation can only take place as a transformation, Pert, or God's activity energy, or God's active energy / matter, Ra, Holy Spirit, life force, etc. Thus, out of God, one, there are gods, three, etc. The first act of creation is Ma'at, the law that governs all events in the world. Electromagnetic forces, quarks, gluons, atoms, molecules, chemical interaction, gravity, the diet of creatures, and that most ignored aspect of life, man's life. Contemplation of the world will reveal that the natural world works because it is built upon laws. The same is it with man. A. All events, activities in the world are made possible through energy which is always governed by laws. This is what makes science and mathematics in our lives possible. B. The events, activities in man's life are also made possible through energy, mental activities, psychic activities, and psychological activities. Man's thoughts determine the behavior of the energy system, Ra, Holy Spirit, Kundalini, Chi, within her or him. When her thinking is not based on laws, but on beliefs or opinions about himself and his relationships to the world, then emotionalism and sensuality is the border of the day. The blind forest The blind forces destabilize, devitalize, and disharmonize the life force, causing the host of ills that have plagued the world from the beginning of time. The opposite is true when her thinking is based on laws, ma'at. It is for this reason that it is said that ma'at is the food of Ra. When the mind is governed by laws, then thinking and reasoning proceeds perfectly with genius. The psychic force manifests itself to attract good things and repel unnecessary difficulties. The psychological mechanism works in perfect harmony, protecting, thus, health and vitality. Shu and Tefnut correspond exactly to the yang and yin principles in Chinese science. They are not deities. They are listed as Netiru, or divinities, following the Kamitic practice of venerating and giving sanctity to scientific principles that govern the life of man. It was a powerful way of securing the observance of these principles by the population. The failure to venerate scientific principles that play an important role in people's lives is a major reason for the problems in the westernized world. All that we have to do is to look at the great disconnect that is known about healthy living and the lifestyle of most people. At present, there is enough scientific knowledge in the world to immediately reduce by as much as 90% most of the degenerative illnesses in the world, and to begin the increase in the lifespan of man towards his or her given lifespan of at least 125 years. Of course, it is far from happening, even for those who know and try. These are the penalties you must suffer for separating science from religion. Nut and Geb similarly represent the divinization for the purpose of veneration of the energies constituting the metaphysical Nut and the physical Geb, parts of the being. We will get a chance to see how they play a role in the divinization of man. You must keep sacred the knowledge divulged about them. Asar, Kanti, Am, Ma, Set, Oset, and Nepet are the faculties of man and of God through which the divine plan is realized. We will discuss these through the exposition of the content of the Nuk, Un Nefer